here, thank you for coming out to Drummond Farm to hear a guest speaker tonight. But the first thing, if you haven't seen it yet or haven't heard about it, hopefully it'll come out in our newsletter tomorrow. That is with me and Tommy to finish up. Tommy's got to do a little bio on who he is, though. Can he do that in time? So, Ellen Smith, Bill Krasusik's past president, his wife, and Chris Hirsch did a Embrace the Screen grant that was so phenomenally written that we were only 4 points off being the highest grant score at TU National of 29 chapters. Wow. And we were awarded $8,500 for the Embrace the Screen program. So nice. Thank you very much. Really, really well written. And we are gearing up now for a lot of things. We're sweating only a little bit. There's an Embrace the Screen grant process. It's going to be on Facebook and Instagram and a whole bunch of things. Orbis will donate 50 cents for every dollar that people donate. And the $8,500 is not enough. I think the total project is costing $43,000. Yes. We have kicked in about $8,500. This is another $8,500. We still need to raise some more money. Some of the $43,000 is in ours, right?
Right, a lot of it is in hours, so what they call in kind. And yeah, I think it's a little bit inflated because TU is all about counting volunteer hours, so a lot of those hours are going to be your guys' sweat equity, because I assume you're all going to be involved in helping out with the sampling.
Yeah, and speaking of sampling and other things, this weekend is really the beginning of one of our first official volunteer opportunities to get on the concept. Do you want to talk about that quickly?
I was hoping to plug it at the end.
You want to do it at the end? Right, we'll save it for the end.
Yeah.
Because it is a conservation project. Of course, we want to study an element of the river, which is going to be part of our Embrace the Screen program. But we are all so excited about it. But we got a lot of work to do to get the website ready, and we just got verified by the state today as a nonprofit that is officially recognized, and all those fun things that we have to do. So exciting news. So what I'm going to ask for you guys to do when you see that. I hope most of you either use email or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, one of those. Please say, hey, I just donated $10 or $20 or wherever you're going to donate. Please forward it to your friends. If you have 10 friends on Facebook and you donate $10 and your 10 friends donate $10, that's $110. So we're going to do this. They're going to trust you. They don't know who I am, but they're going to trust you guys to say, yeah. So that's the one way. I think the Deerfield chapter got over $20,000 just by doing that. Wow. Yeah. So it will help us go a long way.
Are we a registered 503c?
Yes. We're a nonprofit.
So I think some companies, if I were too, they will match.
Yes, if you put in like a minimum 50 or a minimum of 100, so there will be other campaigns that we'll be doing where we'll be, asking. But yeah, you can, if you have a company match, if you know how to make it work with the paperwork, fantastic. Thank you. That's a good point. So, a couple things. Next month, really quickly, we'll be at the Belmont Cinema with the Patagonian film Artificial. And we don't have our online ticket thing going yet. Take a little pause. January, we'll have the fly fishing show out in Marlboro. And right after that, on Monday, we'll have Paul Bunker talking about the Yellowstone Cutthroat Restoration and Volunteer Program. You're probably going, what do I care about Yellowstone Cutthroat? Well, you might go there fishing one day. What we're really hoping is, can we learn from them how they're doing restoration work and bring that here to our Embrace the Screen program, and what we're trying to do with the Neponset and the few fish, or many fish, that we're going to find out about tonight. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. So, one of your partners in crime, another scientist for the Neponset, is Ripley, and he works for the Neponset, and I was working with his dad, Rick Ripley, doing a volunteer day, the DCR Park Service Day, cleaning up everything from tires to toilet seats to needles and syringes to bottles, and there are so many bottle caps I couldn't believe it. And apparently he is an expert at fishing the trout pole and its tribs. So I'm going to let Rick Ripley take it off here and go. Thank you.
Hey gentlemen, nice to see you guys. Thanks for having me tonight. I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I have a lot of years experience in fishing the trap hole, and so I mean, you know, so just given that, I know where to go. I know how to catch fish. It's a great fishery. So I just wanted, I call it a hidden gem. I live in Sharon. Trap hole's close by. I'll give you a little bit of history of myself and how I discovered it as we go through the talk here. But this is a good example of a good 10, 11-inch fish that can come out of there. You know, there's also some 3 and 4-inch fish, native brook trout, that you'll catch out of there too. But there are some good-sized fish in there, and it's just a beautiful place. And now that my son is involved in NEPRA, I've learned so much and I'm so impressed with them and the work that they're doing. So I consider my part is just the experience, and I can tell you how to get there and to get in there and to, you know, to experience it. And we'll talk about that as we go. And then Andres and Chris will kind of fill in a little bit more of the detail of the great things that they're doing to restore and to help keep this beautiful little piece of nature flowing. And it's a really cool place. So this is about the Trap Hole Brook I'll talk about tonight. A little bit of background on who I am and what I do. In the top left there, I'm fishing a pool at the Trap Hole. It's a pretty cool little place. It's got an amazing amount of water, really, especially for now. I was just there a week ago fishing, and I was really amazed at the amount of water that's flowing in there. You know, and it's pretty. Oh, that's a nice thing. It's a beautiful little spot. So that's just one of the main pools that you can find in there. I always loved streams and brooks. When I grew up in Plaistow, New Hampshire, which and if you know it, you know, as a couple of good friends of mine from northern New Hampshire said, you didn't come from New Hampshire. That's not New Hampshire. That's still. So anyway, it's right on the line of Haverhill Plaistow line. And, you know, the Merrimack River there has its tributaries, and eventually flows, one of them flows into a little place that I got to, you know, learn to fish with my dad, called Little River. And, man, I just had some great memories of that place. My dad took me, I'll never forget the first time, I remember there was a Zebco, like a blue one with a white button on it, and probably a red pole. You know, we got probably at JM Fields or someplace, and I remember that I had something on there, and like literally the cliche, oh, it's a log. No, my dad, just give me that thing. All of a sudden, the head shake. I was like, okay, gives it back to me. Reel it in. It was like a 14-inch rainbow trout. And I was about 10 years old from the Little River, and that was it. And I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. So from there, I took that and I just kind of went by myself and into the woods. And again, the memories, they just fly in through my head. You know, going out into the brook and catching nice native trout, native brookies, beautiful colors, the white bellies and the red fins and the, you know, those just gorgeous colors of that Mother Nature puts on some of these fish. And you know, just kept learning, kept trying to get better, kept you know, exploring. You know, I remember finding my way out through behind Thomas's junkyard in this middle of nowhere at a beaver dam, and I caught 6 native brook trout, and just you know, it didn't always come that easy for me. It was like years of hooking trees and falling down and falling cliffs and whatever, and I can't believe to this day I stuck with it. You know, and I finally started learning how to, I'm going to catch these things. I was lucky enough when I was 14 years old that I spent the summer in Alaska. My best friend at the time, his dad got a job on the pipeline out there, and I went out and man, it was so cool out there. We, right next door, they had, that's all right, thank you. That's all right. So, played Jewel Lake, and I remember looking at it out there and saying, we'd go by every night. Of course, the sun wasn't setting, right? Well, it was, but didn't get nice. So the sun would come across the horizon, go right across the horizon, and right back up again. So we could fish all the time. We had like 6 hours of that really cool time when the fish were rising like crazy. I'd drive by Jewel Lake and say, you know, we're casting lures and stuff, and I think, man, we gotta look at all the bugs, look at all the fish eating the bugs. And I said, we gotta fly fish. You know, my buddy Andy, I'm still good friends with to this day, best friends to this day, and he still lives in Alaska. That's another whole funny story. How when he found out he was going to Alaska, he was a top basketball player and had the best-looking girlfriend in 8th grade. And he said, "My father, we're going to Alaska." I remember him punching my garage door. I don't want to go anywhere. Now he's still living there, right? And doing great, loves it there. But anyway, so I said, we got to teach ourselves to fly fish, Andy. And we did. And man, it was a long process. I think the first thing we bought was the wrong thing, the wrong reel. It was a mess. But in about a month's time, it was cool. We were wading around Jewel Lake, and we were banging nice rainbows off the top on dry flies, you know, when I was 14 years old. So from then, I really get into fly fishing, and I get into the Deerfield River pretty good. That top right there, that's the Deerfield. I'm sure many of you guys have been there, and had some great days on that. And then I get into saltwater fishing, and that's a bonito. That's a 28-inch bonito. With about a 15-inch girth on that one. I caught that at the Maritime. I know you guys saltwater fish, but the Maritime Academy is in Buttermilk Bay. It's a nice little place. October's a nice place for albies. That's one of the chunky big albies down on the left. You know, the 10, 11, 12 pounders. Those are fun. But that place comes alive pretty well. Anyway, so I get into the fly fishing thing, all that, but brooks and little streams are still kind of what really, you know, I love it. I just love walking down those brooks and all that. So, it's the next slide here. Yep. This is the Neponset River watershed, and Trout Hole Brook is right here. This little guy, right here, that flows like this, and it's just a small little brook there in the watershed, but you know, it's a beautiful. It flows into the east branch of the Neponset River right here. So there's the action. Now look at this. This is 95, and this is Route 1. You know, it's amazing with all the cars and traffic and businesses. You know, and I'm banging out little native brookies out of that hole. It's pretty cool. Now, how did I miss the slide on the apartment?
No, that's
okay, cool. All right, so why is Trout Hole so special? Well, it's beautiful. There's one reason. There's the first thing that comes into my mind. It's a beautiful place, but it's the water's. I noticed that when I was there. I mean, real cold water, cold groundwater comes from Moose Hill. Moose Hill is a lot of acreage, natural, untouched acreage that you know, provides a good groundwater that flows down and flows into Trout Hole. And the brook is very shaded and rocky, so in many areas it helps keep the water cool and full of the dissolved oxygen. So it's a nice place for the brook trout to survive in. They're surviving. It's still remarkable when you see it. When you guys go, I'm going to show you how to find it, and if you ever want to go visit it, and we'll talk about that afterwards. But it's a really special place. The beauty of it alone, and then, you know, because it's so clean and so oxygenated, the fish love it. So how did I find it? Well, 30 years ago, just about 30 years ago, 6 years before Andres was even born. This is the apartment. This is Norwood Gardens right here. So you can easily find this place. This apartment right there. My wife and I wasn't married yet. It was a month before we were married. We moved in there in July of '90. And I remember I'm up on that deck right there, and the person showing us around says, I see the brook. I look out the balcony, I see this brook, and that's the view you kind of get from that balcony of that pool right there. And I says, that's nice. She goes, yeah, there's fish in there. I said, wow. And I knew immediately. She didn't know. I said, what kind? You know, she didn't know. But, you know, she didn't know anything after that. But I knew. I looked at this fish in there. So right away, I said to my wife, let's take this place. She goes, why did you decide so quick? I don't know. I just love it. The place has a good feel to it.
Yeah.
And we lived there for 2 years before we were fortunate enough to buy a house in Sharon, where we've lived ever since. You know, we raised the family there. But 2 years here. So that summer, not so much. But the next spring, I really got into this. This little brook, and I remember I went out there April, May-ish time frame, flowing pretty good, but not that bad. It was this right here, this pool right here. It's a nice. This comes in really nice right here. It's a nice little rock, ripples and comes in nice. The fish are always hanging right in here, and up back here I got some nice ones too from that pool. But it's really crazy. Like there's people out there, like there was a family over here playing. And I said, I'm going to try to make a cast. And I put on like I don't know, it was like a caddis or something. There's no caddis hatch, obviously, but caddis looked good. It floated nice. And a little 16 caddis or something. I popped it in there, a little snap, and the thing floated down. Poof! Like, oh my God. Like, right off the bat. This was a nice fish, a nice brook trout. And I'm looking around like, you know, the instinct that we all have when we catch a nice fish. Like, I don't want anybody to see me. I don't want anybody to know this. There's nobody else fishing it. And it continued to be like that. For year after year I'd go. And you guys could go and cast, and here I am telling my secret place. But I've had 30 years of it. I don't care. And I know you guys, you do that. You understand that. And it's just a nice little place. But this is just a starting point right there. You can go, if you go upstream, that's where the dam that Chris will talk about in a little bit, the great work that they're about to do to make this place even better. And I actually went upstream once. It goes all the way up and around almost to behind Walmart. And there's some nice pools up there that you can fish. And I also went, if you go left here, this goes all the way around this and out into these like open fields, a meadow. It's like that thick, high stuff. Out like right around Route 1, you can see it. Now you gotta be careful out there. Yeah, almost deep holes, a lot of mud. So you have to watch where you're going. But I was banging rookies out there too. Like there's just a lot of good fish in that little place. But it's a neat little brook. It really is. So that's how I got there. And this is, like I said, I didn't, like, when I go out there, I never really thought I was going to be ever talking about it. So it's not like I went out and took too many pictures. I took that, the picture of this guy, and I took a few more. I couldn't really find them. I have them in albums and stuff. But in retrospect, I should have probably thought about taking pictures over the years. I would have had some really great pictures of fish, but I really just never did. I got this guy, but this is a good representative of what you can find. Some really beautiful fish. Some beautiful fish out there.
A question.
Yes, sir.
Is that natural reproduction or are these stocked fish?
That
look stocked to me, but
well, there's a lot of natural reproduced fish out in there. That because I catch the little brook trout or you can with the coloration.
Stock them because they stock a lot of brooks in Metro West.
Oh, they still stock. There's stock fish in here.
Yeah.
They do throw trout in there.
Yeah.
But you'll also get the natural reproduced trout out of there. So some of them are real small, and some of them are, some of them are good size. But they're definitely in there. So this is just more pictures of, obviously it's the kind of place where you're gonna bring a fly rod if you have something nice and small. You want to use that for sure. I have a little 5-weight. It's probably maybe even too big for that size. You can get away with something smaller. The cast is no long casting involved. It's a lot of short, quick flicks in the cast. It's, and it's very simple. It's, pheasant tails or copper johns or that I use. But I think you can use anything. Anything will work in there. So, it's, good luck with lots of different flies. really is. But the smaller the better. They really don't have a lot. The other thing is that's important, and I think Andres and Chris will attest to this, is when you're in here and you're going upstream or you're going downstream, you want to be really careful of how you're affecting this brook. You don't want to be tromping through and moving around the rocks too much. Thank you, Andres. Protecting the small water source. You want to make sure you're traversing the brook carefully. You don't want to move the rocks around too much. With the rocks, when the water runs over the rocks, that creates more oxygen. And the holes that are there, the fish are able to, they know they're there. It's the natural spot for them. So, now I know that fish on the left is not a trout. That's a redfin pickerel. And I know this is not, pickerel unlimited here, but I just, it was just a really beautiful fish. I mean, the beautiful red fins on that. It actually ate a copper john. So, just a cool little fish. I just wanted to throw that in. I took him a couple weeks ago. But anyway, just a reminder, when you do go here and you are walking around, you decide to travel upstream or downstream, just keep in mind the fragility of the ecosystem, and just try not to disrupt anything about it. Try to leave it exactly how it is. It just makes it a lot nicer for the future trout, especially as NEFRA works on restoring it like they are. So what are the issues with trap hole? Right here, this is the pond, which is upstream of where that little pool is. And this is, Chris and Andres can talk more about this and the work that they're doing to release that, to break that dam, so we have better water flow there. Chris, you want to say anything at this point? Or?
Sure, yeah. So we're working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as the Division of Ecological Restoration with the state of Massachusetts, on a priority project to remove this dam, because the state recognizes what an important kind of resource this is, especially regionally, how significant it is to have a trout population as large as this brook does. And so we've done a few different temperature studies here, and we're able to demonstrate that the pond, especially in the summer, was getting too hot for the trout, and it was essentially ruining the trout habitat within the pond and for quite a distance downstream. So put in an application, and now we're kind of in year 1.5 of the planning, hoping to have design plans for the removal of the dam by the end of the month, and then we're going to be pushing forward. Surprisingly, I don't know when that picture of the pond was taken, but it no longer looks like that. It's been filling in with silt pretty heavily for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Especially so on the left there, that's an outlet that's kind of formed from erosion after what I presume was a massive hurricane that basically blew out the side of the dam. And as that's been eroding down, the water level's been dropping in the pond, and it's been filling in with sediment. So the neighbors you would think, people living on waterfront property want to keep that, and it's usually a very hard sell to remove these dams. People like their ponds. But in this case, that erosion really helped a lot to make the case that, they're never going to repair this dam. You're never going to have the pond that you used to have. Why don't we work together to make something that's going to be beneficial for the trout, beneficial for the resource as a whole, and you're going to have something that's not just a filled-in mud pit in your backyard. So it was an easy sell. They're loving the project. They're super excited about it, and just all around, it's going to be great. So you'll be hearing plenty more of that, I'm sure, in the next couple years as the project progresses and we start to move towards removal.
Quick question related to what you were just saying. So when the pond recedes and eventually becomes a stream again, the land that was previously part of the pond that fronts onto these people's property, who gets that land? Does that go to the state, does it go to the landowners that abut it, or
So-
how does that work out?
So this is kind of interesting from an ownership standpoint. Basically, right down the middle of the pond is the property boundary. The neighbors own the bottom of the pond up to their frontage, and then the town of Norwood actually owns the other half. So they would get obviously whatever they already own under the pond.
Yeah, and this is just, it looks bigger than it is. Right
Yeah, it's
now,
about an
like
acre.
Chris mentions, it's, this is really all filled in here. So it's really, that gives the impression that this is nice, is a healthy, like,
It's,
it's
no.
not, so. But anyway, that's,
But it's funny. I mean, when I first started working here almost 4 years ago, it looked like that. It looked like a pond still, and it's deteriorated so
30
quickly.
years ago, I put my canoe in there. And, whatever, a couple years after I started playing in the brook, I said, this thing was beautiful, was healthy, and big, and I put a canoe in there. And I was catching fish in my canoe from right in this little pond. And then you can still catch fish in there, it's just not as healthy as it could be.
Right.
Was this a mill pond at one time?
It was an ice harvesting pond.
But you can, like, if you don't want to, if you take a drive here and you park in Norwood Gardens, and I'm not saying it's legal to park there. I don't know. I've never been bothered. And it's a short walk to this point, and you can hit a couple pools on the way. If you go in May and June especially, you can, or just take a walk up there. You'll see it. It's easy. It's a beautiful, as usual, loaded. Most of these places loaded with poison ivy, so be really careful. All right. I mean, I've had some bouts with that.
Rick, were you planning to talk about the other dam removal that we did on Trap Hole?
Well, you have
Oh,
that right
perfect
there. There you
timing.
go. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of you may have been there. We worked with GBTU to remove a small obstruction. It was basically, I think it was an old cart path, essentially. A whole bunch of boulders just thrown in there to block up the water so that you could, pull some small vehicle across. But we worked with the chapter to get that pulled out, just, brute force, a bunch of guys with some crowbars. And within 30 minutes, people were seeing trout passing upstream through there, which is really cool.
That's great.
This is a little bit further upstream in a beautiful piece of property owned by Siemens Corporation. They have their factory right there and just have enormous undeveloped plot of land that Trap Hole Brook runs through. Beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah, it's
Do
another.
they mind people passing through to use the stream?
Generally, no.
Okay.
I think the most difficult thing is parking. So there are a couple places you can park. I can show you on a map after if you're interested. And then you can get back in there. But yeah, generally that's probably the biggest barrier. I mean, nobody goes back there. Nobody's even going to know that you were there.
Yes. And the other thing is, I recommend. You probably won't need your full wading gear. If you have the old-fashioned hip boots, it's a perfect place for a perfect time to use them, and a perfect place to put them on and go in there because most of the time you can just especially if you're trying not to mess things up, you can stay knee deep, ankle deep, and kind of just do snap a few casts or do a little slingshot cast or something. So it's there's no double hauls involved in any of this. This is all just quick flicks and playing in the current that way. But beautiful spots. And again, even if whether you're fishing or you're just taking a walk and taking a look at it, bring a camera. It's a beautiful spot. So again, more work by this by NEPR. Again, I just want to reiterate, not just because my son's working for this company, but That's part of it, because I'm educated, he's educated me, and I've learned so much about the work that they're doing, and it's really cool. It's great work that they're doing. Couple examples here. They're doing a lot of tree planting to increase the shade, and you see how important that is to help keep the water cool. As we all know, our trout love the cooler water. Measuring culverts, there's Andres right there, and for fish passabilities, to increase habitat. And you guys can talk more to this, but Andres was explaining this eDNA testing, where they can just do a test in the water, and you can actually look for trace DNA to find out if there's brook trout within a kilometer away, or any trout within a kilometer away from that spot. And that's fantastic. I mean, you can
Sure, yeah.
add to that, but that to me just blows my mind. That's something great. And
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I mean, that's the foundation of kind of what this whole Embrace the Stream project is all about, is, finding where the trout are, figuring out what the stressors are that's currently affecting them, and coming up with a plan of action of what we're going to do about it, whether that's planting more trees in areas that have been kind of cleared, if there's problem culverts that are fragmenting the trout streams. And there's a surprising number of cold water resources in the Neponset watershed. So we've got 9 different, technically 9, they're really 8, because one of those streams is basically just a branch of the same stream. But yeah, there's a lot of cold water resources. We're very interested in doing everything we can to help them hold on, especially with climate projections and hotter summers that they're talking about happening. So we're trying to eliminate as many of those stressors so that the fish can really get to where they need to get to survive some of those cold or those hotter drought stretches. So we're looking at culverts, we're looking at dams, we're looking at bank habitat and stream cover, and then we're going to deploy temperature loggers so that we know what the temperature regime is annually. So we're going to be looking to you guys for a lot of help with that work. We're going to need volunteers to basically adopt a logger and go out there once a month and download the data via Bluetooth on your phone. We're going to need people to go out and collect the eDNA samples that will tell us where exactly the trout are now and where they're not. We're very interested in knowing where they're not currently, so we can figure out what's going on. Is it too hot for them there? Is there, something blocking them from getting there? Trying to basically tell the story of what's going on in these brooks. So I'm super, super excited for this project. I think it's going to be great. And I'm really excited to get you guys out there to kind of see some of these places that really nobody knows about.
Another little spot of where they're not anymore, unfortunately, is fairly close to Trout Brook in Sharon. A little brook called Beaver Brook, where again before Andres was born, I was right out by the train station. There's this little brook that flows, and for a couple springs, I felt I was in heaven a couple times. It was plenty of room for backcast, good long stretches, and fish and trout. But then it just stopped. Right around 1 year, it was nothing. Went from something to nothing. So again, finding out where they're not is going to be just as important to find out why, because that's a shame that something like that happened. That's happens. Anyway, really, really great stuff that NEPA is doing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to. I've been here. I've done it. I'm no expert, but I just have a lot of experience walking in this water and catching these beautiful fish. So, and now you know where to go. Put your hip waders on and tread lightly and have fun. Thank you.
So your map showed this